conforming with the expectations of your key stakeholders in terms of what is ethical conduct. Now, in terms of managing compliance risk, the compliance function in an organization is there to ensure that there is an effective program for managing compliance risk. However, compliance risk is everybody's business, from the chairman of the company right down to the shop floor of that business. Compliance risk is not simply the concern of the compliance function. It really is everybody's business. So why do we need to manage compliance risk? And this is the answer to this question is perhaps obvious to all of the attendees who have joined this meeting and to anybody who will play back the recording. But let us just quickly look at some reasons that I have articulated here. First of all, non-compliance can lead to sanctions, enforcement actions in the form of fines, license suspension, revocation, criminal prosecution, which in turn can lead to prison sentences. Non-compliance can lead to lawsuits by injured parties, whether these be customers, employees, or members of the public. Non-compliance can also lead to supervisory restrictions on the type or scale of business that can be conducted by an entity. And non-compliance can also lead to permanent disbarment or exclusion from an industry or profession. So, failure to properly manage compliance risks can lead to damage to your reputation, compromise disrupted business operations, financial loss, business closure, all of which are undesirable. So, if you look on the previous slides, compliance risk management, or CRM, is critical for success in business, but really from a defensive or negative standpoint. We need effective compliance risk management in order to avoid adverse consequences. We don't want to face the possibility of some sanction. We don't want regulators to restrict our business. We don't want sanctions. We don't want criminal prosecution. So we're trying to avoid adverse consequences. However, positive public perceptions about a company's compliance culture can have a positive impact on business development. If people perceive your company as being a compliant one, they are going to perceive your company as being a very honorable one, as being a very ethical one. If you're in the financial sector, they will also believe that your company, because it is compliant, is going to be a company that quite likely will avoid financial failure. So there are some positive spin-offs from effective compliance risk management, separate and apart from the avoidance of adverse consequences. Actually can help to build a very positive public perception of your company, which in turn can have the spin-off of generating business for you. But in addition to that, beside the positive public perception, which can then allow for the development of business, effective compliance risk management can also yield information on customers that enables a business to address client needs in a very effective and profitable manner. If you think about the requirements under the Proceeds of Crimes Act in relation to know your customer rules, and if you regulators in that area. By virtue of doing customer due diligence, knowing who your customer is, understanding his business, understanding his needs, you're in a better place to sell products to that customer because you have a better understanding of the customer's needs. So there are a lot of positive spin-offs from effective compliance risk management. You can avoid adverse circumstances, you can build strong positive public perception of your business, which then allows you to attract customers, but also effective compliance risk management will allow you to understand the needs of your customers in a much deeper and meaningful way, and that hopefully will allow you to sell products, design products that meet the needs of your customers. What are some of the challenges to effective compliance risk management? First of all, there always is tension between commercial considerations and compliance considerations. Those persons who are on the commercial side of the business, whose role it is to bring in customers and to develop business, sometimes they have a tendency to see the requirements, whether they be internal or external, that have to be satisfied by the business as being something of a handicap. And so there sometimes is tension between the commercial considerations, the impulse to get business, and the compliance considerations, which is the impulse to do business in the right way. Complying with external requirements, also bearing in mind prudence, ethics, reason. Sometimes deficiencies in the corporate culture can create a challenge for compliance. And in companies where there is a dominant shareholder who exercises great influence over the decision-making process in the business, then the regulators regard that kind of a scenario as being one where there is dominance risk. So when you have dominance risk, one or a few players have disproportionate amount of influence, and that sometimes impacts on the quality of the decision-making process. That can have serious consequences in terms of the quality of compliance risk management in a business. Knowledge gaps. If the compliance function is not aware of new requirements in the regulatory environment, then that can cause problems. If the compliance function is also not aware of new developments within the business, new products that are being developed, new deals that are being pursued with customers or potential customers, then that can create a problem, because then the compliance function will not be able to lend its expertise in the consideration of those matters, whether it be the design of new products or whether it be the contracting of new business with existing or prospective customers. The pace of change in regulations can also be a challenge. We're in an environment where there is rapid change all the time. Innovation in terms of product offerings, innovation in terms of technology. The regulators sometimes are trailing innovation in the market, but then the innovation inevitably leads to changes in regulatory requirements, and as new requirements are introduced, then compliance professionals have to become aware of those requirements and have to ensure that the other relevant business lines, business functions within their organization, that those employees staffing those business lines and those business functions are made aware of the new requirements. Significant challenge to effective compliance risk management is where there is uneven enforcement or there is non-enforcement. And if internally individuals do not comply with requirements, whether it be internal policies and procedures or whether it be a requirement that is laid down in law or in some other source of stipulated requirements, then the non-enforcement, the non-application of sanctions makes it difficult for the compliance professional to persuade everybody in the organization that it is very important that all requirements, whether they be internal or external, be complied with. Similarly, if law enforcement, if the regulators do not take strong action whenever a business does not comply with the law or with regulatory guidance, then it is difficult for the compliance professional to persuade management in his company that they should toe the line, that they should do the right thing. Because if management is seeing the competition getting an unfair advantage by breaking the law without suffering any form of penalty, then it's difficult to persuade management to do the right thing. So these are some of the challenges faced with, that a compliance professional is faced with on a day-to-day basis. Now, let's take a look at the essentials for effective compliance risk management. And an effective compliance risk management program would include a number of elements, and I've suggested a few here. It has to be documented policies and procedures within the organization, both regulatory awareness, so the persons who have responsibilities to carry out functions which will ensure that the organization complies with the law and with other external requirements. They need to be aware of all the requirements of the law and all pertinent external requirements. There should be a program of risk assessment which would look to see whether or not the organization is complying with all relevant requirements. There needs to be a program of monitoring the compliance and reporting on any monitoring activities. There needs to be problem resolution mechanisms, so whenever problems are identified, they need to be resolved. And most importantly, the board of directors need to understand that the buck stops there with them. They are the ones accountable for the organization's compliance. We've been stressing that compliance risk management is everybody's business. But certain departments have key roles to play in relation to compliance risk management. Frontline customer service, customer relation officers have a very important role to play. Internal audit also has a key role to play. The risk management function, if it exists, it will have a key role to play in terms of identifying risk and making sure that there are measures put in place to mitigate those risks. Legal and corporate secretarial function also has a key role to play. The human resource function has a key role to play, as indeed does finance and the compliance department where it exists.